We did a backstage this week, and Ben told me something that I did not know that I found kind of shocking, was that talking about COVID and the lockdowns and Fauci is an audience killer. People don't want to hear about it anymore. They want to get past it and they don't want to think about it. And I think that that is a serious problem, because in that moment, the government really revealed to us who it was and how it wants to run things. And central to that effort was the attempt to shut down churches, and even more importantly, the weaselly willingness of churches to let themselves be closed down. And even as an atheist, when I was an atheist, I believed, for reasons I'll expand upon later, I believe that we had to support churches and their freedom as the institution that was best able to defend our natural conscience, because you cannot defend yourself against the government. It's simply too powerful to take it on alone. And that's why I was so admiring of John MacArthur, who was the pastor of Grace Baptist in LA. Who was at that time had been told by my doctor that I was at great risk from COVID. I went to his church just to support it. Didn't wear a mask and just blended in with everybody. And at that time, everybody was telling you to be terrified. And I was a little nervous, I'll confess, but I just wanted to support him. He went to bat and he went to battle along with some other pastors against the city of Los Angeles, led by my friend Jenna Ellis on the legal team. He is one of the central subjects, John MacArthur is one of the central subjects of a new documentary called The Essential Church. Now, I watched this documentary, and I believe it's in theaters now. The Essential Church, I watched this documentary because Jenna asked me to, and I told her, I'll watch it, but I'm not going to plug it, and I'm not going to talk about it unless it's really good. It is really, really good. And Jenna knows that I wouldn't do that. And I watched the entire thing. It's moving, it's inspiring, it's very powerful, and it's important because it shows us how the government behaves toward religion, not just now, but always, especially the Christian religion. I wanted to talk to its writer and director, Shannon Halliday. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations. You did a terrific job.
Oh, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be on. I love your show.
So can you tell the audience a little bit about the story that you were telling and why you decided, you tell it in a very, very straightforward narrative way, and why you decided to tell it that way?
Yeah, one thing is I wanted it to be about the church. And so I focused on church history, the local church, Grace Community Church, and then our Canadian brothers and sisters, which represents the global church. It's not really about John MacArthur or Grace Community Church, though we do tell our story, but we tell it through that lens of the church and involving church history, because I believe there are things here that need to transcend COVID and lockdown. And I agree with Ben, actually, that we do have COVID fatigue. And I would say this film's not really about COVID. And I would hope that 20 years from now, the theological themes and what happened through the story showing that would transcend 20, 30 years from now.
You know, one of the things I just loved about the movie, first of all, you place it in a historical context so we can see that shutting down churches is not a new thing. You know, stopping Christians is something that's been going on since there were Christians. But it also shows something else, which I just found enormously touching. Pastors are frequently not he-men. They're usually kind of nerdy guys, intellectual guys. And what you saw was that these guys, in conference with Jesus Christ, became heroes. I mean, some of them went to prison. I was wondering what it was like. Had you been talking to these Canadian guys all along, or did you only learn about them while making the film?
No, I knew about them before. Tim Stevens was kind of new to me. We knew of James because he actually went to seminary at Master's Seminary a while back, so we had a connection there. So when he was imprisoned, we were sending him letters, we were sending him messages. John MacArthur was talking about him. But yeah, what happened to him was super eye-opening, and to Tim Stevens, because really when they were arrested, you know, they weren't put in jail. They were put in maximum security prison. And at that time, they didn't know when they were going to get out. It could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. They didn't know what was going to happen. And they had to say goodbye to their families and go to a maximum security prison because they weren't willing to compromise their conviction. And they would say it's not about their courage. They would say it's about conviction. And we would say that too, that what we did during the lockdowns really wasn't about us conjuring up courageousness. It was about being convicted based on what the Bible says about the truth, that Christ is the head of the church. And we don't dole that out to the government for anything, even a temporary edict.
I have to say, watching the scene of that guy being taken away to prison, that pastor being taken away to prison while his family wept, you know, if you don't want to call it courage, okay, but it's something awfully close. And I know it had to do with the spirit and his belief, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And your point in the film is kind of that martyrdom And this is martyrdom, there's no question about it. Martyrdom is typical of the history of Christianity.
Yeah, that's right. And we wouldn't compare ourselves to the same kind of sacrifice that the Covenanters made, which is in the film. They lost their lives over this argument. Many of them, they took the stand on this conviction of, I am not going to compromise the headship of Christ in the church. The king, the state, can be a member, but they can't run the church. The king can be a member, but he can't be the head of the church. So that is a constant conflict throughout history. I mean, I'll never look at Exodus the same in the Bible. After COVID, I see Exodus in a new light. And it really was the Pharaoh, the state, saying, you need to worship this way. He wanted to regulate their worship. And the Lord says, you're not going to do that with my people. They answer to me and not you. And I'm going to make an example of you. And we see that throughout the scriptures. We see that in Daniel, when a temporary edict was put on Daniel. He says, I'm not only going to pray, I'm going to open my doors, and the whole city's going to see me pray. You're not going to stop me from doing this. And those are our examples. And then we see that throughout church history. And Satan always makes a play for the headship of the church. He wants to control the church. He wants to shut down the church. He wants to manipulate the church. And I think Christians hopefully walk away from this film saying, I'm more aware of that, and I don't see the government as a neutral party anymore. I understand that spiritual warfare is in every sphere that I walk into, and as a Christian, I need to bring my Christian world view with me so that I can discern what's actually happening.
It's really interesting. I told Jenna that I laughed out loud when I saw her. She was so eager to get the government on the stand, and the government knew it, and they headed for the hills. Where can people see the Essential Church?
Yeah, the best way to learn about it is go to essentialchurchmovie.com, essentialchurchmovie.com. And on the homepage, you can click on a button for tickets if it's still in the theaters when you hear this. And it'll take you to a page with a list of theaters. You can put your zip code in, and you can see if there's a theater near you. But we're also pre-ordering Blu-rays and DVDs.
Great.
So if you want it in Blu-ray, which I suggest because it's shot in 4K, it's beautiful. We went to Scotland and shot a lot of this. It's really nice. So I'm going to have a 4K version, but you'll have that. You can pre-order that. And I think we're going to have those towards the end of August. But go to essentialchurchmovie.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, there's actually a place you can put in your email and you can subscribe, and then you'll be updated on all the developments concerning this film and any future projects we may do.
Shannon Halliday, thanks for coming on, and congratulations. You did a great job. You really did.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you again. Thanks. So I want to show you just a very brief clip from this film, because at the end there is this, I found hilarious because of its triumphant tone, where Jenna and the other lawyer, she had a big law firm with her, she wasn't obviously the only lawyer, they maneuvered the government into a place where they could get them on the stand and start to ask them questions under oath. And the government just said, shut down their whole effort to stop John MacArthur and his church. And MacArthur is on there saying the kinds of questions he wanted to ask. So take a listen.
What is the statistical figure that gives us the death rate of COVID? Not dying with COVID, dying from COVID. What is the age group that is most susceptible? What comorbidities contribute to death? Show me the efficacy of masks. Show me the efficacy of lockdowns so that you could actually say it's so important to have a lockdown that we can destroy an entire economy. We can destroy an education system. We can destroy families. We can destroy people's lives. And if you are willing to do that, based on those statistics, what in the world is motivating you? Why are you doing this?
That, to me, is the big question. Why are they doing this? Well, why do you think? Why do you think the state always, always, always martyrs the church? You know, a lot of times conservatives talk about the practical value of religion. It's been true for centuries. I mean, George Washington said, let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principles. So in other words, the religion is there to inculcate the morality, which it does do that, yes, but the religion basically gives the morality sense. It gives it logic. It gives it a reason for being there. Without it, as I keep telling you, not only will you not have morality, you'll have the exact opposite of morality. So religion, is useful in preserving public morality. It makes you happier. It holds families together. It makes you feel more fulfilled. But the problem with all of this is that no man of conscience can profess to believe in a thing unless he thinks it's true. I'm not a Christian because it's good for me. I'm not a Christian because it makes morality logic. I'm a Christian because I came to believe in the unique witnessed miracle of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I believe in it because there were thousands of witnesses. I mean, that's one reason. But because it perfectly explains to me what I see in the world, which is not a bunch of experts who know how to run things, which is the person next to me who is a creature of God. When God took on human flesh, he was saying to us, you can live into the image of God. You can live into my image, into the image of justice, into the image of truth. You can become the language of created humanity. Created humanity is a language for speaking about spiritual things. We don't know what we know by pure reason. We don't know what we know by force. We don't know what we know by education or learning. I mean, all of those things are tools. They're right. They're truly tools. But the created tools God gave you, your mind and your body and your gender and your feelings and your reason, your human spirit, which is a wholeness that comes out of your body and out of your history and your life and it is not a random thing. But I've said this before, but the people who say that evolution is random are not speaking logically, because if there is a system, the order of that system, the reason for that system exists outside the system. So you can see hints of it in the system, but you cannot see the entire thing because it's outside the system and you're inside the system. So you can't tell if it's random. You don't know if it's random, but there are signs that it's not. So I have long been opposed to the idea of Christian atheism. And if you want to read me about this, there's an article called Can We Believe in City Journal. You can just Google Can We Believe Klavan, and it comes up. And I stand by every word of that article, even though I wrote it a few years ago. And I've long been opposed to the idea of Christian atheism. This is an idea put forward by the philosopher Marcello Pera and Douglas Murray. I think Jordan Peterson used to say it, but I think he's kind of moved away from it, which was that we should act as if God were real, but we don't have to believe that God is real. And I just don't see how you do that. Ultimately, it seems to me that is wanting to get to the end of an equation without believing in the equation itself. But there is one way in which I might concede the point. Those of you who listen to the show carefully and are not, swept away by emotion know that I have no personal animus against Donald Trump. I decided I was going to vote for him. I was talking to Knowles last night. We were talking about the fact that it was a turning point in this organization when I came in and said, I am going to vote for Donald Trump. And I did it before anybody else, and I voted for him again. And if I have to, I'll vote for him again. I judge him like I judge everybody else by his behavior. I don't judge his spirit. That's not for me to do. That's for God to do. I just judge his behavior. And when I think it's wrong, I say it's wrong. When I think it's right, I say it's right. He's a deeply flawed man. We're all deeply flawed. But he's a big guy. He's a big, expansive character. So his flaws are also big. But we look at him, I think all of us look at him, and I don't accept myself at all on this. In our hearts, he represents something better than he is. He's like all of us are a language for something, and he expresses a humanity that in all its flaws has a sort of effervescence and an energy and an honesty and a willingness to dance and joke around and scream against the power, even when the power is, as it is now, tormenting him unfairly. And when we vote for him, even those of us who have real problems with him, and I do, when we vote for him, we're voting for that. Now, in the end, and in the long term, and I don't know if this is true of the 2024 election because I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but in the long term, I think that there is a better representative of the things we want to say about humanity than Donald Trump. And I think that representative is you and me. And I don't think we represent it alone. I think we can only represent it gathered together in the name of God, what we Christians call in a church. And I think when people ask me what's the first thing conservatives should do to win back the country, my answer has become we should gather together in the name of God. David Mamet, in a wonderful movie called The Verdict, I don't know if you've seen it, he gives the lead character a speech where he says, act as if ye had faith, and faith will be given to you. And I don't want you to believe what you don't believe. I truly don't. But I think we've reached a point where even if we don't believe, we can at least gather together with one another. In God's name, we can at least gather together and talk about God as we haven't talked about him, as we haven't been allowed to talk about him, as we've been told not to talk about him. We can test whether, if we gather in God's name, because God said, if you gather together in my name, I will be with you. We can see if we gather together, he will appear among us, which he has done in ages past. And that's the only solution I can see to the problem that we're in now, that if we gather together in God's name, he will appear to us as he has in ages past. If you want more great content, like and subscribe, and don't forget to subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.